On this episode of the NESN Patriots podcast, we break down a new report about Bill Belichick's future with the Patriots, give our takes on Malik Cunningham leaving New England to join the Baltimore Ravens, and also dish out some superlatives for Patriots players who deserve far more credit than they've gotten this season. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the NESN Patriots podcast, a special COVID cast episode of the NESN Patriots podcast, fitting in a week that the Patriots are going to host Mr. Pfizer himself, Travis Kelce. Zach is up in Foxborough covering the pressers and Patriots media availabilities and all that stuff. I'm down in Warwick, Rhode Island, which, for those that don't know, is inaccessible to parts of Southeast Massachusetts now, if you've been following the disaster with the Washington Bridge, but that's a story for another day. Zach, we had an episode after the Steelers game, so I don't really want to rehash that game too much, but I do think it's interesting that, it's kind of been a good run here for the Patriots from a positivity standpoint. They get the win against the Steelers. Belichick kind of has the wind at his sails and, has like the day that's sort of all about him with Army Navy, not all about him, but, that's a good spot for him, obviously. And then the Patriots get a lot of good results to break their way from a draft outlook standpoint that we'll talk about later. But then, kind of reality set back in this week with Tom E. Kern's report that the Crafts decided after the Colts game in Germany that they were going to move on from Belichick one way or another this offseason. Not really a surprise, obviously, given the, that topic and what we've all read and heard about it as the season's gone on. But my question to you is, if assuming that report is true, do you think it was the right call for the Patriots not to fire Belichick midseason and to, play out the string?
Well, first off, I hadn't heard about this bridge disaster. You're essentially just on your own literal COVID island at the moment, right?
Yeah,
now.
we basically got like Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, where they've been working on one of the bridge that connects Providence to 195 if you're going to head over to the Cape or that whole area, Fall River, and they've been working on this bridge for a few years. And just 2 days ago, they went in there and found severe structural deficiencies that could have made it collapse at any moment. So they've completely shut down that bridge for the foreseeable future. And now commute times that used to take 25, 30 minutes are up to 2.5 hours. It is a complete catastrophe down
well,
here.
I guess if there was a good time to get sick, you did pick the time where you don't actually have to leave your house and deal with all that traffic. So that's
Exactly.
a little silver lining there. But yeah, on the Belichick report, I think it was the right call to not fire him during the season. I know we talked a lot about it in the moment after that Colts game. It all sort of seemed like not quite a foregone conclusion, but definitely trending in that direction during that whole stretch, especially when you saw what the Patriots did in the 2 games after that Germany game, just ugly performances against the Giants and the Chargers. But I was always of the mind that you wait this out until the end of the season. What's going to really change by firing Bill Belichick in mid-November, early December? By that point, the Patriots were not officially eliminated, but essentially eliminated. Their season was going nowhere. And with somebody with the stature of Bill Belichick, that's not really a move that you make in the middle of the year. And then adding on top of that, as Karen mentioned in that report, if you trade him in the middle of the year, there's no chance that you could potentially trade him, or if you fire him in the middle of the year, no chance you could potentially trade him in the offseason. We'll see if that's something that happens. But yeah, this was a explosive report that kind of flew under the radar, which I think was part of the kind of muted reaction to it until late in the day, because it was just said on a NBC Sports Boston program, not written anywhere, not tweeted anywhere, not really publicized at all. So that makes you wonder about it a little bit. I'm not doubting Tom's reporting. He's got great sources in the building, but I think that's why some people saw that and said they kind of viewed it a little bit skeptically. It wasn't a huge surprise to me. I do think that the most likely outcome by far now is Bill Belichick will not be with the Patriots after this season. But it was certainly interesting and very notable to hear it laid out in that definitive of terms.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if this was written like Sunday morning by Adam Schefter in one of those,
Oh,
or
it would
even
be
Ian
huge.
Rappaport,
Yeah.
right? It'd be you get all the notifications on your phone, all this stuff, and but that not the case with this one. It just kind of got aggregated in a few places. Certainly gained some traction, but yeah, it wasn't sort of picked up and treated as like breaking news, Belichick done kind of thing. I agree with you. I think it was the right call. I think the trade piece is a huge part of it. That makes a ton of sense to me. Who knows if they're going to be able to trade him, but I think you have to give yourself the option at the very least. And also, just and we'll get into this a little bit later. But I just think, generally speaking, yeah, I don't think there was much, if anything, to gain from firing Belichick because I think his roster building is a negative, but I think him as a coach is still a net positive. And I don't still get any sort of sense that he's lost the locker room or that players aren't playing hard for him. Quite the opposite. The Patriots, I think, if anything, like I think they deserve a ton of credit for the way they've still been playing hard and competing this season despite an increasingly bleak situation. So I think there is something to be said for keeping him in place and the culture he creates, the standards that he sets, all that kind of stuff. Because you don't know what it's going to be like when it's gone. So I think the positives to holding on to him outweighed the negatives in my opinion. So we'll see how all that goes. He talked about it today, gave the I'm just focused on Kansas City line, which was no surprise. But listen, the season ends January 7th. So we might get an answer to all this here in just a few weeks, which is kind of crazy to think about sneaking right up on us.
Less than a month now. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to imagine that we will know one way or another by January 8th, January 9th. Typically, when these things happen, they happen basically right after the season on that Black Monday. So I doubt this is something that Robert Kraft would want to stretch out into February or March or anything like that. I think if you're going to see a move, or you will either see a move or a backing of Bill Belichick by the day after the Patriots final game. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's coming up quick. It's going to be
Well,
a real kind of franchise shaking judgment day. Yeah.
yeah, and especially since all the teams that he's been rumored to potentially going to, Chargers, Commanders, Panthers, I'm not throwing the Giants in there, but most of those teams, they're not going to be in the playoffs. So if there is some sort of back channel trade being worked out, there's no reason for it to not be sort of finalized and announced pretty quickly after the season because none of those teams are going to be playing for anything. And that includes if there is some way in which Mike Vrabel comes back because the Titans aren't going to make the playoffs either. So yeah, all this could get a bow on it pretty soon.
Also, too, I mean, if you part ways with Bill Belichick, you're going to have to replace him, even if they view Gerard Mayo as the kind of number one target for that, which there's been some recent reporting that might not necessarily be the case. But even if they do want to hire Gerard Mayo for that job, it would be crazy for them to not at least evaluate other options. I mean, if the Patriots are lucky, they're not having to go through this process again for another decade or so. So you want to make sure that you get this right. Even if you really like Gerard Mayo, which it's clear Robert Kraft does, you want to cast the widest net possible and talk to as many people and interview as many people as possible. And the longer you wait in the process, the more of those people get snatched up for other jobs. So yes, would certainly behoove them to be pretty swift with this once the season does end.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be that. And as we get closer to the end of the season, you got to imagine more and more reports like this and rumors will come out. So it's going to be interesting. The other big news of the day or of the week is Malik Cunningham going to the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens signed him off the Patriots practice squad to their 53-man roster. Belichick was surprisingly open by his standards this morning when asked about it, saying the Patriots wanted or tried to keep him, but the Ravens sold him on the fit that he is in their offense. Obviously with Lamar Jackson, there's a Louisville connection there, and just in general, that the Ravens were a good fit for him. And Belichick agreed. He said they probably fit him better than any offense in the NFL. So I guess the question is, the whole Malik Cunningham thing to me is just kind of funny that because he's a practice squad player who might be terrible. Like we have no idea if he's even any good.
Yeah,
And he
undrafted player too. Yeah.
didn't throw a pass, didn't register a carry, didn't register a target at all with the Patriots. But nevertheless, like he's just been a huge talking point all season long. And so I guess my question for you is, should the Patriots have done more to see what they had in Malik Cunningham, given, how, soon it became obvious that the season was going nowhere?
Yeah, I think they should have. I mean, at the very least, he's a very talented and exciting player. As you just said, we have no idea whether Malik Cunningham can play in the NFL. We have no idea whether he's going to turn out to be any sort of respectable pro at all. But the Patriots clearly don't have their quarterback of the future on their roster. There have been gigantic questions about that position all season. And when you have a guy like Cunningham with his skill set, it seems like they should have at least given it a shot. And I think there are going to be, if the Ravens try him out as a quarterback and he turns into anything, I think there's going to be some valid second guesses
Totally. Yeah.
of why the Patriots didn't just work him as a quarterback to start with. Like, why are you trying to make this guy a wide receiver? Why are you trying to have him play a position that he's never played in his life, rather than seeing what he can do at quarterback? Again, there's no guarantee that ends up happening, but I mean, this seems like a perfect landing spot for him. When I saw this report can't come across yesterday, I said, oh yeah, of course, that makes sense. I mean, the only argument that you could say, or that you could make, was that he has a clearer path to playing time here in New England, but that's not even the case anymore, because it's very clear the Patriots just don't plan on giving him any playing time.
Yeah.
And given Lamar Jackson's injury history, who knows? Maybe he'll get a chance there. I know he still has Tyler Huntley ahead of him on that depth chart, but he's going to a roster that where he is now no longer the kind of change of pace wild card type. He's going to an offense that is specifically built to maximize the strengths of mobile quarterbacks, going back to what Bill Belichick said this morning. And I think he's going to fit in great there. But yeah, it's going to be, if he kind of flames out, you can just say, all right, well, he never had it anyway. But if he does become any sort of player, either for the Ravens or for somebody else down the road, you're going to look back at that and say, man, that was kind of a missed opportunity. You had this guy for 6 months and you just never really used him the way he should be used.
Yeah, and an interesting layer to this whole thing is, you know, how players like Trent Brown reacted, saying that, hoping Cunningham could go and flourish with a team that respects his ability, or however that was phrased.
Respects his talent.
Yeah, respects his talent. That certainly felt like a veiled shot from Trent Brown. Maybe not. I haven't seen him like come out and sort of try and like backpedal from that or anything.
Even beyond, I mean, the Trent Brown one was obviously the headline grabby of these social media posts, because yeah, that does seem like, hey, go there to a team that respects your talents, seemingly is saying you were on a team that did not respect your talents.
Yeah, we
It seemed,
asked.
yes, seemingly suggesting that the Patriots weren't using him correctly. But even beyond Trent's post, it was crazy to me to see just how much this team loves Malik Cunningham. Like, this was a guy who, again, undrafted rookie on the practice squad, who has played 6 snaps in the NFL. And it seemed like half the Patriots roster had social media posts saying, man, we're going to miss you. Like, go kill it in Baltimore. You're going to be missed around here. You're such a great player. That doesn't happen. I mean, these kind of roster moves happen all the time in the NFL, and you don't see that kind of reaction from established veteran, even defensive players. You saw guys like Matthew Judon, Mac Wilson, Jawan Bentley, Adrian Phillips. This isn't just Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte, his fellow rookies, saying, man, we love you, we're going to miss you. This is guys from all across the spectrum of the Patriots roster, from offense, defense, old, young. And again, that's unusual for a player in his position. And it really speaks to just how well liked and well respected he was within that locker room for such a young guy.
Yeah, and you see him when we're in the locker room, I see him like interacting with and joking around with, like you said, players, offense, defense, special teams. Like, he's kind of all over the place. And it does seem like, yeah, players kind of gravitate to him or really like him. I always see him kind of hanging around and joking with Christian Barmore. And to your point about how players reacting, what you lose the lights over there?
Yeah, I think I got to wave my arms here I'm in like a storage room at Gillette Stadium right now. Keep talking. I'll get this thing back
For those
up.
on just
There we
listening
go.
to this, for those just listening to this, Zach just became shrouded in darkness, but now he's
I
back.
should have kept it on. It looked like it was like some ghost stories kind of stuff. You could only see my face there, but all right,
Right.
we're good. Continue.
Yeah, I was going to say, to your point about not seeing players react like this often, I think it was similar timing last year when Cam McGrone was plucked from the practice squad and signed to the Colts. I don't think I saw any post about him. So I think that speaks to, like you said, I think players thought he was, had some ability, but also he was a popular guy in the locker room. And as far as whether or not they should have given him a chance, I think 2 things can be true. One, yes, they should have, because what was there to lose? Like, they don't have many dynamic athletes on offense. You might as well have just given it a shot. But on the other hand, like, it probably never would have worked, just because the Patriots offense is so dysfunctional that whether it be as a quarterback, he was going to be set up to fail because every quarterback is set up to fail in the Patriots offense by the coaching, by the bad offensive line play, by the bad receiver play. And then as a receiver, every receiver on the Patriots basically has gotten worse as the season's gone on. Even someone like Demario Douglas, another rookie who, I think his production's gone up, but if you watch him, he's increasingly running the wrong route in the wrong spot. And you just wonder what kind of coaching he's been getting on the positional level. And related news, Ross Douglas, assistant receivers coach, going to Syracuse this week for the rest of the season. But I just think no matter what position he was going to play in the offense, it probably would have done nothing, just because I don't think anybody is set up to succeed in this Patriots offense. But at the same time, what did they have to lose is kind of where I go back to.
Agreed on both points there.
All right. So I want to just do something different this week. Maybe it's just because we're too close to it, or I've had a little while to think over the last 10 days, or maybe I've been duped by that win in Pittsburgh. But, I do think, as bad as the Patriots are, and they are bad, there are a sneaky, significant amount of silver linings to the season. Not significant, but there's a decent amount of them. And I think a lot of players, not just players, but coaches and just people kind of across the spectrum who maybe deserve more credit than they've been getting, especially within the context of a bad season. So I just wanted to go through and kind of have each of us give 3 players, coaches, whatever, that we think deserve more credit than they're getting. We'll each do 3. We'll go back and forth. So I'll start. For me, I think Mac Wilson, the linebacker who the Patriots got last season in the trade for Chase Winovich, that sent Chase Winovich to Cleveland. Chase Winovich now retired. So the Patriots kind of automatically win that trade. I just think he's played really well here over the last 5-6 weeks, I want to say. Belichick the other day said he's had an outstanding year, which is a little hyperbolic, but he has been, I think, really good here with the limited playing time over the last 4 or 5 weeks. And, I just think this is a guy who last year did not play well. I think it was the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season. He saw no defensive snaps, kind of an afterthought when he hit free agency. I didn't expect them to bring him back. When they did re-sign him, there was a report that people in the building were stunned that Belichick re-signed him because he just didn't seem like a good fit. He kind of rides with this promise of being like, hey, the Patriots need athletic sideline to sideline linebackers. This guy could be that, and he wasn't that. But this season, he kind of has been that. And I'm not saying he's Roquan Smith or anybody like that, but I do think he has been good. I believe he's a free agent again this offseason, so we'll have to see if they bring him back. But and maybe I'm just overreacting here, but I do think, he's been good enough to the point where, I once thought linebacker was one of the biggest areas of need on this team. And listen, if they can go out and draft or sign their Roquan Smith or whoever, I still think that's a good idea for them to do. But now with how solid Jelani Tavai's become, how important and solid Juwan Bentley is, both on the field and in a leadership standpoint. And then what Mac Wilson does bring from an athleticism standpoint and a playmaking standpoint, they might be good at linebacker, if not good, fine, where maybe they don't have to address it this offseason. So I think Mac Wilson, for me, has been an underrated contributor and deserves more credit than he's been getting.
Yeah, if we're handing out superlatives at the end of this season, I think you could give the most surprising contributor and most improved to Mac Wilson. This was a guy that, as you mentioned, you essentially seemed like he was exiled from the defensive game plan last season, didn't play a single defensive snap over the final 5 weeks. And sort of worked his way in slowly this year. But yeah, he's been awesome lately. He made a couple of impact plays in the red zone against Pittsburgh last week. And Belichick has really had a lot of nice things to say about him lately as well. My first one is in a similar vein. It's Anthony Jennings. I think he has gotten a little bit more attention probably than Mac Wilson, just because he's kept this streak up for longer. Remember, this was a guy who was a healthy scratch in weeks 1 and 2. And ever since Matthew Judon went down with that, which we now expect to be a season-ending injury, Jennings has been, I would say, one of the Patriots' better defensive players, especially against the run. He's been really good at setting the edge in the run game. He's been playing the largest workload of his career, and he's really impressed me with what he's been able to do, especially as a run defender and even occasionally in the pass game with some of his pass rush type stuff. It's gotten to the point where if you're he was basically an afterthought in the Patriots contract year rookie class, that draft class from 2020, because you've got Kyle Duggar, you've got Josh Uche, you've got Mike Owenu as the big three there. But Jennings is part of that class as well. And if I'm predicting right now, I say he probably has the best chance of re-signing of all four of those players, just based both on value and how well he's been able to play this season. I think for somebody who, yeah, we really just weren't even really considering at all coming into the season, he's been one of their more important defensive players with what he's been able to do with Matthew Judon out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he kind of, helps form the identity that they have on defense. He plays a hard-nosed style of football. He seems to just quietly go about his job, and works really hard. And like you said, does a really good job of setting the edge. He's also like, I go back to that those joint practices in Green Bay when he was right at the center of this, a lot of the fighting. He laid out somebody that was kind of going after Keon White a little bit. So more than I think Patriots fans might think, he's kind of I don't want to say a leader, but he is kind of a tone setter on that side of the ball. And that's been especially true as he's gotten more playing time. So I think, yeah, he's been really good. And I would agree, like they should re-sign him this offseason. They absolutely should. My other pick, Cole Strange. Listen, I don't think he's been like amazing or anything. And I still think you absolutely should second guess that first round draft pick. Using a first round pick on him was a bad idea at the time. It remains a bad idea now. But how is he as an actual player? It's fair to question that early on in the season because last year was so up and down, even though he finished well. And then this summer, he suffers the injury, which kind of wiped out his training camp. And then he wasn't very good at the start of the season. But I do think over the last 3, 4, 5 games or so, I think he's been much, much better. He's starting to stack success, as they say, in Foxborough. He's especially good in run blocking. He still has his issues in pass protection, but one of the big things is, when he struggled, it's usually going up against bigger defensive linemen. And that still does happen from time to time, but I think he started to hold his own more against players like that. And I think that was true last Thursday in Pittsburgh. So, again, it's a first round pick that's going to be questioned probably, forever. But I do think he is starting to round into a good player, if not better than that, on this Patriots offensive line. And, going into the offseason, obviously tackle is going to be a big need. But if they re-sign Mike Onwenu at right tackle, I think they can feel relatively confident with Cole Strange at left guard, David Andrews at center. Hopefully Jake Andrews is waiting in the wings whenever David Andrews is done. I think City So has been good at right guard, certainly, promising enough to have that job next year. And then we'll see if Mike Onwenu comes back as the right tackle. But if those four are in the mix next season, I think those are the bones of a good offensive line, and having Cole Strange kind of round into form lately is a huge part of that.
Yeah, I think if we made this list 4 or 5 weeks ago, Cole Strange would not have been on it.
No.
There were times early this season when he seemingly was benched. There were times when people were saying, well, why don't you just start Antonio Mafi there? He might end up being an upgrade. Yeah, yes.
I did that.
But he's really improved over the last couple of weeks. And that's a good point about the offensive line moving forward, because City Sow was somebody that I was going to mention on this list. He's played reasonably well for a rookie ever since he became that full-time starting right guard in, I believe, week 7. And if you can keep Mike Onwenu to play right tackle and you feel decently well about that interior trio, it's really just, okay, you got to find our left tackle. Obviously, that's easier said than done. It's one of the most important positions in football. But I think with the way that Strange has played lately, coupled with what they've gotten from most of their other offensive linemen, you do feel a little bit better about the future of this Patriots offensive line than you did a couple of weeks ago when the whole unit was just a disaster. Again, the tackle spots still very big question marks. You don't know if they're going to be able to re-sign Mike Onwenu. You don't know what they're going to do on the left side. But yeah, Strange has definitely, I would say, improved his internal stock certainly over these last couple of weeks. My second player is Jonathan Jones. You kind of know what you're getting with Jonathan Jones at this point. He's not going to be that number one cornerback. He's not Christian Gonzalez, but he's also missed some time with injuries this season. But I think on the whole, he's had a pretty solid year. Certainly given the Patriots a lot more stability than they've gotten at the other starting cornerback position. which was Gonzalez early in the year. Then he got hurt. Then J.C. Jackson comes in, played well at first, didn't play well for a couple weeks, got benched, got suspended, and he's been very up and down ever since he came back. And then you obviously had the whole Jack Jones experiment, which is now over. Throughout it all, John Jones has just been kind of steady over on the other side of the field. Looking at his some of his coverage logs from Pro Football Focus, he's only allowed more than 50 yards in a game once this season. That came back in the Vegas game where I think he allowed a deep ball to Devontae Adams and one to one of the Raiders' other receivers. But other than that, since then, 0 yards, 37, 50, 24, 26, 28, 24. Obviously, you can quibble with the way they chart some of those completions, but that's a pretty solid run for a player who's had to play a ton of snaps, has dealt with some injuries, and has really had a ton of inconsistency on the other side of the field. So I think he's quietly had another pretty strong season for the Patriots secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's been really good this season, despite battling through some injuries early on in the year.
Right now, he's PFF's 19th ranked cornerback. So
yeah,
take with that what you will.
right. Yeah, and we were having this conversation the other day. Where does he rank in cornerbacks in the Bill Belichick era? And I think you could make a case for top 5 if you include Darrelle Revis in the top 5, which I do. I mean, I know it was one season, but you go Ty Law, Darrelle Revis, Stephon Gilmore, probably Asante Samuel, and then it's kind of like Jonathan Jones, Malcolm Butler, first tour of duty, J.C. Jackson, maybe Otis Smith in there. And I think you can make a case for Jonathan Jones just because of his consistency, his versatility, just how dependable he is on and off the field. A sneaky, great Patriot player over this run that probably doesn't get not just enough credit this season, but over the course of his career.
Yeah, the answer to where does he rank in that, it's higher than you think.
Yeah,
we were talking about that. I believe it was in the Pittsburgh press box. I was like, there's no way he's a top 5 cornerback. And then you chart them all out and you're like, huh, yeah, he's at the very worst, like a fringe top 5.
Yeah.
He's not top 2, not top 3, but he's somebody who I don't think gets recognized quite as much for his contributions over his entire career than some of the other quote unquote stars of this Patriots defense.
Yeah, and listen, who am I going to trust? Who would I trust in a big game to do their job at a high level and not have a bunch of mistakes between John Jones, J.C. Jackson, Malcolm Butler, even Asante Samuel? I'm probably taking John Jones. That's just me. Yeah, good player. Okay, my last one. Actually, Zach, how about you give your last one real quick, and then I'll finish with a little bit of a soapbox as we get into the last couple topics.
All right, my last one isn't directly a player, but it's Steve Belichick and Gerard Mayo, and I guess overall the Patriots defensive coaching staff, which has remained intact for the last 4 or 5 years. Patriots are playing very well defensively despite not having probably their 2 best players since week 4 in Matthew Judon, Christian Gonzalez. Neither of them have played since the Dallas game. And basically every week, with a couple of exceptions, the Miami game was an exception, the Saints game. But overall, this has been one of the NFL's better defensive units. And they've kept that up lately, despite getting basically nothing from their offense until last week in Pittsburgh. It would be easy for players on a team like that, in a unit like that, to eventually just say, all right, man, what can we do? And just sort of give up, pack it in, say, hopefully I'm on a better team next season. And then the Patriots kind of implode down the stretch. I think that's something that you've seen with a team like Washington, who was very good defensively, traded their best 2 players, had a good game against the Patriots, and then just sort of fell off the map, and they've been terrible lately. That hasn't happened with this New England defense. I think it speaks to the leadership that they're getting from some of the players like Bentley and Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar, but also to the coaching staff, to the scheme. They've had to work around both, I mean, obviously the Judon and the Gonzalez absences, but John Jones has missed time, J.C. Jackson's missed time, Dietrich Wise has missed time, Bentley missed a game. There has been a lot of mixing and matching that has been required. And I think overall for the Patriots defense to be as competitive and as effective as it's been in basically like 75 to 80% of their games this season, I think that's a very good testament to what they're getting up top.
Yeah, and if you would tell me that going into the season that they would lose Christian Gonzalez, and not just Christian Gonzalez, but what we eventually realized Christian Gonzalez was,
Yep.
they would lose him, Marcus Jones, Jack Jones, and that they would be having to play, this current version of JC Jackson, which is not very good. I would assume that the defense would be getting gashed on a regular basis. And yes, they're not facing great offenses, but they've held their own on all three levels, including in the secondary. And I think, to your credit, that goes to the de facto co-defensive coordinators in Belichick and Mayo.
Yeah, run defense as well. It's been
Right.
the best in the NFL this season, one of the best statistically in the last decade. I'm going to be interested to see whether that gets DeMarcus Covington any additional looks as a potential defensive coordinator during this cycle. Had a couple interviews last year, and that's a pretty good resume builder to say, hey, our run defense is the best in the NFL since 2013 or 2014, whatever it's been.
Yeah, that's a great point. I wonder if DeMarcus Covington will get more defensive coordinator interviews this offseason. My final one might sound weird saying for a team that's 3-10 and by many measures probably the second worst team in football, but the Patriots as a whole, I think, deserve more credit than they're getting, just because, like, yeah, they're really bad, and I'm sure behind the scenes there is some level of dysfunction. How can there not be when the defense is giving up 6 points a game and still losing? I'm sure there's finger pointing. There have been some cracks along the way with the Jack Jones situation, JC Jackson getting the sort of de facto team suspension, Trent Brown, a couple of weird moments there. But on the whole, like, I just think the franchise has conducted itself as if it's anything other than a 3-10 dumpster fire. And I think that just goes to, what we were talking about earlier with keeping Bill Belichick in place. Like, we can complain about him still doing his stubborn Belichick routine in the media, but I've talked to players the last couple of weeks, and a couple of them have talked publicly about it too. How important it is for him to, maintain his consistency and stay who he is, and also to maintain, the culture of winning there and the standard of excellence, despite, losing starting to feel like the norm. And I think they're all really serious about that. And him, staying who he is, not just when he's talking to us, but behind the scenes, and what seems like a true steadfast focus on the next game and getting the team ready to be in the best possible position to win the next game. I think that's all still legit, and I think he's still doing that. That was alluded to in the report today from Dan Graziano, where, Belichick's only human and he's 72. Like, if it would be easy for him to pack it in, it would be easy for anybody over there to pack it in this season, but he still stayed true to himself. All the players, like, they still say all the right things during interviews, both in press conferences or in the locker room. I think the team plays hard every week. A lot of these games have been really close. And I just think, it's something to be said for, staying true to sort of the principles and the belief of everything you represent as an organization, despite, the huge adversity they're facing. And, maybe that puts whoever takes over as head coach next season in a better position to succeed right away, because he's not taking over, a true dumpster fire in all aspects, just a team that maybe isn't that good. Maybe that's just, maybe it truly is just, they have to get good players and better coaching and they'll win. But I do think there's something at an existential level to be said for, how they've maintained the whole Patriots culture throughout all of this thing.
Yeah, it's been interesting to hear players, especially Jabril Peppers, has come out multiple times in the last couple of days, unprompted, and said, hey, I don't like all the flack that Bill Belichick is getting. It's the player's fault. He shouldn't be getting this blame. It does seem like the locker room is still behind Bill Belichick, and that culture is still in place. On the other hand, though, you can look at it from a cynical view and say, Patriots are 3-10. They have not been competitive in several years, and Bill Belichick is still doing the same thing, and he has not changed his approach. This is why you need to remove Bill Belichick and make a change. And because if he's just the way that he does things worked for a very long time, it clearly is not working right now, and it has not worked for the last several years. My lights just shut off again on me.
Oh,
Here.
whatever.
I'm going dark mode for the end of this podcast.
Yeah, Zach's on night mode, just like your cell phone.
But yeah, I think it's definitely respectable that the Patriots have been as intact as they have been during a season like this. I think I expected it to be a lot worse.
Me too.
Just
Totally.
from a vibes perspective, for lack of a better word. That has not happened, even though the results haven't been there. But again, the point of professional sports is to win. And especially somewhere like New England, that hasn't happened lately. It certainly hasn't happened this year. So it's pretty easy to craft a case for why they should make a change up top and try to send things in a different direction.
Yeah, and I agree. I think two things can be true. I think huge changes are needed, including moving on from Belichick. But I also think I'm leaving open the possibility that the way they've conducted themselves this season from top to bottom could benefit them in the long run, because you don't want to take on all the things that make some of the losing franchises in the NFL what they are, because a lot of those franchises, it's not just about the wins and losses of them. It's all this other stuff that you see follow them year in and year out. We're seeing it with the Jets this year. They've been a mess beyond just the wins and losses. And, I think the Patriots, for the most part, despite not really ever being in this position, have navigated it reasonably well. And I think that's credit to Belichick, the team leaders, ownership, all of it.
It does seem, it is kind of funny comparing the Patriots to the Jets, just quickly before we get off here. The Jets have 2 more wins than the Patriots. They have a better record than the Patriots, but I don't think anybody would say this Patriots season has been more dysfunctional than the Jets season. Maybe last Patriots season was more dysfunctional, but certainly things have been not quite as disaster riddled as they've been with some other teams that might be in a similar position.
Yeah, I agree. And so real quick before we get out of here, and I do want to note that I went through this whole podcast without mentioning Taylor Swift. That was by design, outside of just naming her right there. So kudos to me for that. But nevertheless, Patriots Chiefs this weekend. Zach, do you think the Patriots have a chance in this game? I think we're both probably on the same page about this.
I think they do. I wouldn't be picking them right now, but I think they have a chance. They've defended Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs well in the past. This is a situation where you got to have some respect for the Chiefs receivers, but it's essentially a take away Travis Kelce, and you're going to have a pretty good chance of slowing down that Chiefs offense. I think the Chiefs defense can give the Patriots some real problems, especially against the pass. But I don't know. I don't view this as the Patriots are going in and they have absolutely no chance and they're going to get destroyed in this game. I think they keep it close. I don't think they will win, but I think they can win. That's my official prediction.
Yeah, agreed. Because I think they're going to stop the run, especially if Pacheco doesn't play. They're going to have a plan for Travis Kelce, because they always do. And then where does Mahomes go after that? He hasn't really been able to find somewhere else to go with it for much of the season. And I think the Patriots will have a plan, because they always do against Mahomes. They always do a relatively good job against him. And then we'll just see what the offense does. Chiefs have a good defense. It's going to be tough, but I think it'll be a close game. And I would just say that, that kind of feeds into my weird belief that the Patriots are better than their record. And I truly believe that, and at the end of the day, you are your record. However, almost lost my microphone. Their losses this season are by 6 points, 3 points, 4 points, 3 points, 14. The 2 big losses to the Cowboys and Saints, obviously. 4 points to the Raiders, and then 5 points to the Eagles. 7 points to the Dolphins. That's a lot of close football. And that goes back to last season too, with the Bengals loss, the Raiders loss, all that stuff, where you can squint and look at this and go, a few plays here and there, we're not talking blowouts, a few plays here and there, and this team is almost has a winning record. If the offense was just bad, not forget about even competent or good, if the offense was just bad and not historically awful, they might have a winning record. And I think that's about how down the AFC has been. The Chiefs are down, but it also just speaks to how good the defense has played. So it's weird. I look at the Patriots and think they have a chance against the Chiefs, and I kind of give them a chance almost every week, because they are kind of better than their record says, even though they also at the same time are terrible, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, which can kind of scare some fans down the stretch, because I don't think either of us would be completely shocked if the Patriots went 3-1 in their final 4 games and ended up screwing themselves out of a high draft pick. That's not what I would predict, but if they come out and win this game 17-14 on Sunday, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, how did that happen?
Right. Yeah. I agree. And we're not going to go down the draft rabbit hole in this episode, but the only thing I'll say is for fans to know is, if the Patriots win 1 or 0 games the rest of the way, they are guaranteed a top 4 pick. And then potentially puts them in line to draft quarterback Drake May or whatever quarterback they target at the top of the draft. So obviously that's the big storyline to watch down the stretch. We'll see what happens this weekend. Zach's got to go check out practice. I've got to go find some medicine. You can follow Zach's Patriots coverage at Zach Cox NESN on X, mine at Dak Randall, and you can follow all of our Patriots coverage on NESN.com.